I think it's important, first of all, to realize that not all migrants are coming from areas where there's high fertility levels. So when you think of migrants, there's a very diverse population there. And after migration, many of them adapt their fertility levels rather rapidly. So those who come from high fertility countries, which is only a share of the migrants, are adapting their fertility over time. And with the second generation, so those born in the countries where their parents migrated to, very often have the same levels of fertility as the native population. So in that sense, for migrants, you need really very large number of migrants to compensate the loss in fertility of the native population. I think it's very important that you really take into account the diversity, but of course there are some migrant groups that are quite different in their behavior. For example, the traditional guest workers in Europe, the Turkish and the Moroccans, largest groups in that sense, and they marry at a relatively young age still. They have their children at a relatively young age, but the second generation again is postponing quite a lot of those experiences in the family life. So it's very hard to give a very clear answer to what extent they are different, because there's diversity in origin groups, there's diversity between first and second generation, and there's diversity in migration histories throughout Europe. Actually, education is one of the most crucial roles, I would say, to play. First of all, because when you're in education longer, you see that many people actually postpone other transitions in their life course. But education also plays another important role, and that is shaping equal opportunities for all. So education has an important role in trying to bridge the gap that is potentially there between majority and minority groups, in allowing them to reach the same levels of education and getting the same opportunities afterwards in society, as we know that they are very closely related to behaviors more in the public and the private domain. I think it's very important for policies to provide equal opportunities for all in society, whether you're from a migrant background or not. And that can be achieved by, for example, having a good educational system where also children of the second generation are reaching the best educational level they can actually get. But you can also think of other policies, because many European countries still exclude migrants from the labor market, or, for example, from integration courses or anything like that, until they have an official status. Like refugees are not allowed to work in many countries before they have their refugee status, and that can take years, which means that you basically put aside a huge resource potential for a long time before you're actually gaining them before they can gain a position in society. And as you can imagine, that has major impacts on people's lives. So by providing more opportunities from the start, you can really try to have everybody participating in society. And the same applies, for example, to acknowledging degrees that people received somewhere else. Now, very often it's very hard to get your diploma that you got somewhere else accredited in the country where you moved to. And that means you're not allowed to work at the level you actually already have before you migrated. So I think that's on the side of integration. But with regard to migration, I'm quite skeptic about how policies can manage this. Of course, in the short term, they can probably make people move to another country by having restrictive policies of immigration. But I'm pretty sure people who want to migrate and are in a bad position will migrate anyway, and they will find ways to do so, whatever policies you have. So on that point, I'm a bit more skeptic what can actually be reached. I think when people have a certain picture, it's hard to say it's wrong, because apparently it's coming from something. So they have this picture of what migration is. I think what we sometimes lack is good data and information on migration. For example, a lot of people think migration is a new phenomenon, and it's not. I mean, migration to Europe, as to elsewhere in the world, has been for ages, for years, decades. So it's nothing new that we're encountering. And a lot of people are sometimes thinking that we are flooded by migrants. This might be true in certain cases when there is a crisis around the world. But it's definitely not the case that we are totally swamped by migrants. And we should also remind that we probably need these migrants very much in our aging European societies in the near future to be competitive with the rest of the world. So on that point, I think we really need more and better data sometimes and bring that to the public to show actually the diversity in migrants and migration, to show who is actually coming and settling in here in order to be able to make societies that are still socially cohesive as well.